It's 2008. Skateboarding is at its peak golden era, riding off the coattails of the progress made in the 90s, and business couldn't be better. Just last year, Tony Hawk's launched Project 8, and EA finally debuted the brand new skate game. Skate companies were still skate-around, and the internet was still barely a toddler. Street skating was in its last few years of pre-adolescence, and the pros at the time heavily reflected that mindset. Baker 3, the long-awaited final piece in the holy trinity of skate video history, had dropped in 2005, with the green and gold touch of the first Shake Jump video following just a year later. It was clear that Andrew Reynolds had built up a small empire with his brand new friends, and his good homies Eric Ellington and Jim Greco knew the aggressive side of Baker was manifesting into its own. Like an evil twin emerging from a tumor, Deathwish was born behind the grime and grit that was behind the Baker family. Almost as if out of necessity, this brand fulfilled a large niche that could only be experienced and captured in that moment. So what do you do when the brand gets so big you need two companies to fit everyone? Take a page from Growing Chocolate and come out swinging. For me, Baker Has A Deathwish holds a special place in my heart as the first full-length skate video I'd ever seen. As much as I had a grasp on what a pro skater was, I had little to no clue what a pro skater's life was like. This video not only gave an introspective to what a skate team could be, but just how much fun being on a skate team looked like. Baker Has A Deathwish had it all. From groundbreaking skate clips, to the amazingly obscure soundtrack, to the obscene hijinks and nonsensical out-of-context wonders Beagle just so happened to be filming. Some noteworthy parts are definitely Lizard King's intro, Shane Heil's overall nonsense, Dustin Dollon's pure self-destruction, Jim Greco's curious fit choices, and Antoine Dixon's timeless style. Coming off the era of the first two Jackass movies, hijinks were in high demand, and this skate film was a good 50% skating and 50% chaos, with tons of memorable phrases and moments with every skater involved. However, as previously mentioned, at the time street skating was still emerging from its adolescence, and with the release of the long-awaited sequel to this iconic piece of skate history, we will see just how much Baker and Deathwish have grown in the 16 years since. In an attempt to almost metaphorically pass the torch to the younger generation of skaters, Part 2 opens up with one of the youngest in the crew, Zion, and his 3.5-minute long part. Set to the tune of Satellite of Love, opening with Zion sets an immediately opposite tone for this video when compared to Part 1, where we have Lizard King hailing Satan before dump trucking into a metal grate to the tune of Wet Wipes by Cameron.
Ellington's green as shit, kid, for Satan right here. Killer.
The stark contrast and feeling from the intro lets us know right away this will not be the same band of misfits from the last adventure. Zion is a phenomenal skater, and I think it's a really smart move to set the expectations with what the younger generation is capable of. He has a very quick and comfortable style with some impressive clips in this footage. Definitely the best of the new Groms in my opinion. In a solid attempt to show just how diverse Reynolds' empire has truly become, we switch from Zion to Alyssa Steamer, who boldly opens her part with some classic shit-eating. In terms of the OGs who made appearances in Part 2, Alyssa definitely delivered in terms of total footage, understanding that nobody expects you to bust out insane lines or tricks at your age, and at the end of the day, people just want to see you skate. Her part is another solid 3.5 minutes of footage with American music by the Violent Femmes bump and some good vibes, before we take a break with watching Max struggle with the concept of knowing when your pants are just too far gone. Next up is the newest, recently announced pro to Deathwish, Brian O'Dwyer, in his farewell to the Amateur League part that consisted of some very solid tricks and several rail chomps backed by 2 separate songs. Brian has been consistently shredding, so it's only fitting that they turned him pro with the release of Part 2. He was the only pro announced with the release of this video, which I thought was fitting as Baker's definitely look a bit stacked at the moment, so showing Brian and Deathwish some love is a smart move. Faced with the task of following up 5 minutes of recently turned pro footage, Sully decided to opt for an attack of quick single trick clips, some of which get glossed over so quick you barely realize how insane it was till almost 3 clips later. He specifically does this nollie front shove over a street grate, and there's something about absolutely horrid looking tricks being done at insanely high speeds that just sits right with me for some weird reason. Out of all the clips he managed to fit into this 3 minutes and 39 seconds of footage, he decided to end it out with an early grab wall ride, and I'll leave it at that. After that back-to-back attack, we start to get a little funky with Figgy and his rather impressive stack of footage backed by the Ohio player's jazzy influence. Not to say Figgy is old, but for being in his 30s, he's still skating fairly well, but not pushing the needle as much as he used to. His quick appearance has a lot of flip-in, flip-out tricks, but it was nice to see him even have footage for this video. After we get through that part with Figgy, we get to Lyric's quick land to the skate part, with some tasteful promises of a future skate career based on the footage he was able to get into part 2. He definitely showcased a decent amount of versatility, and compared to his last footage from 2022, he seems way more comfortable on his board. Hope to see him pull together a full song's worth of footage for any project he's involved in the future. Next, we got Neen Williams. And well, Pedro, Divvy, and Zach all share a quick 3-minute section, and overall it wasn't bad, but you can almost tell this felt like leftover footage from all 3 of them hanging out for a day or 2. Definitely serves as a nice transition into our next part where, thankfully, Stu picks up the pace with some serious speed, huge handrails, and street gaps, all to the sweet serenade of Mandy by Barry Manilow, which would be an odd choice for anyone but Stu, honestly. I felt he picked up the slack from the previous few minutes just in time to prepare us for what I felt was the best part in the whole feature film. When it comes to sheer amount of footage, Casper definitely holds the top spot in part 2 with both runtime and trick count. About halfway through the runtime on part 2, Casper really went above and beyond for his part, and it shows with some insanely powerful lines, and I honestly didn't even realize how few actual skate lines we've seen up to this part till I noticed there wasn't a jump cut every 5 seconds. Whereas some riders could barely muster some B-roll, Casper's part is very trick heavy, and his Jaquan sign ledge destruction was amazing to watch. Up to bat right after this onslaught of footage is Spanky and Vince Palmer, both of which have really small sections, but it's good to see their face make the lineup. Luckily, as much as it's good to see familiar faces, new faces are good too. Yuri Fashini makes his debut with an insanely lofty shifty flip followed by some insane tricks, a Beagle cameo, and a large Welcome to Deathwish flooding the screen. Sort of wish he saved his Welcome to Shake Jump footage to help beef up this part since they're all in the same camp, but it was definitely a good boost to vibes right before we get hit with the throwback track from part 1. As soon as I heard the beat kick in, I knew Lil Wayne's Blowing Up Fast track was on and I could care less about the next 5 minutes because it was like a rip from 2008. Showcasing parts from Lennis, Jacopo, Shane, Theotis, Neckface, and Sean O'Connor, this is probably one of the few moments from part 2 that gave off that hint of familiar energy from 2008. Continuing this shift in energy, John Dixon's part decided to let the skating speak for itself and give your ears a peaceful break to a deep cut from music artist Denny Lyle. Aside from Casper's part, John was another one that surprised me with just how good it was. Although I personally feel it didn't match up with the vibe of the grand scheme of the film, and he could have honestly released this as a standalone and it still would have been just as good, in all honesty. In a quick follow-up sequence, we have both Sammy Baca and Jim Greco making one-trick cameos before Alec Ellington shows us all he's still alive with a few clips he filmed in the span of a couple hours. Definitely would have loved to see more from them, but you take what you can get, compared to that of some of the other pros that were just entirely absent. Once we've blown through the team, we can get to the main boss man himself, Andrew Reynolds. His song choice for this part could not have been more fitting, as the lyrics perfectly encompass everything that has made up his life's work and the relationship the teams two have. I felt that the repeating line of the chorus, "We are two, we are not one," although easy to disregard as a song lyric, served as a subtle nod to Deathwish and Baker's history. His skating will always be timeless, and it's inspiring to see how much joy Andrew brings around people and that people bring around him. What he does is simply his whole life, and it's amazing to see what he's helped inspire and put together for the current generation of skateboarding culture. To conclude this spectacle of skate video, there is only one person in the entire roster of skaters that is capable of closing such a film out with a bang, and has yet to make an appearance in this film as well. And that skater is none other than Jamie Foy himself. I knew the second that he announced this, he would have probably the last or first part no matter what. He's been fairly quiet in 2023, but came in clutch. Jamie's part showcases a steady barrage of heavy-hitting rail clips and unique combos I can't say I've ever seen. Definitely a part worthy of closing this full-length feature, as I'm sure, like me, everyone was expecting Foy to drop some footage with it. Containing almost the exact same amount of runtime as the previous film, when compared with that of the original Baker Has a Deathwish video, this one definitely comes across as a more fully grown and socially aware moment of time for all the skaters involved. Reflecting both growth from the OGs and a passing of the torch to the new Groms, this full length has almost a little to no hijinks reminiscent of Part 1 that personally made it so nostalgic for me at least. In terms of Part 2, compared to its predecessor, I would approach this as more of a modern reboot than a continuation on what was made previously. In a way, I feel that this was the best way to edit this film as to abstain from what I'd imagine Andrew feels is an older, outdated image of Baker and Deathwish, and also to align better with the new generation that he wants to promote. As much as the hijinks in part 1 were nostalgic for me, watching back I can't only feel a sense of pity and embarrassment for moments captured on camera that live on forever for some. Especially the ironic speech made by Terry Kennedy halfway through that just did not age well. Although this full length lacked the charm of the original, it had a lot if not more skate-focused clips, and they did their best to fit as many people possible. Some notable parts are definitely without a doubt Casper and Dixon's in my opinion, as I personally did not expect both that amount or quality of footage from them, but both their parts were phenomenal when compared to the bunch. Although Foy's part was definitely very solid, the sheer amount of footage Casper was able to pull together was no easy task and definitely deserves some credit. There were some notable missing parts from T-Funk, JK's, and Riley Hawk amongst others, but overall I feel that Baker Has a Death Wish Part 2 is a perfect reflection of the current times we live in. Whereas Part 1 was a crew of like-minded young adults trying to navigate their way through life and this experience as what it means to be a pro skater, this sequel almost comes across as more of a fully realized and grown reflection on what skateboarding and skaters have become. Long since the days have passed of riders chugging bottles, trashing hotels, and throwing more than caution to the wind, do we now see the adults in these young kids, and the young kids in these adults. Skateboarding keeps people going, and for this video, I feel that for the OGs like Alyssa, Beagle, Reynolds, and more, it's what kept them young. A personal fountain of youth, with 4 wheels, 7 plies of wood, and an idea.
Eat that shrimp, eat that shrimp, eat that shrimp, eat. Oh, Jesus!